You're listening to the Running Channel podcast with me, Andy Baddeley, my co-host Sarah Hartley, and breathing through his mouth over there in the corner and pushing buttons, actually doing two things at the same time, very well done, is Rick Kelsey.
I'm still sweating, actually, from 2 days ago.
Was that when you tried to breathe through your nose for an hour?
Yeah, still sweating. And I did 2 runs at the weekend.
Whoa.
Oh, show off. Okay,
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about can you change your running form or should you change your running form? 2 really good questions. And answering your questions as well as touching on the news from the running world. So let's get stuck in.
So Andy, someone on Strava's made a really good assessment of your running recently, in that you've done more walking than running.
Yeah, I think they deserve a name check actually. So that's Adam McElhenney. He says, just to throw some flame on the Sarah and Rick fire, you've recorded more walking distance than running distance this week.
I did actually check this. I went into Strava at the weekend and I was like, oh, Andy's walked quite far.
Yes.
Did you go hiking?
Well, so I squeezed my running in last week, and there is some running that I don't put on Strava. Either I hide it because we're doing on certain projects for the running channel where we don't want everyone to see exactly what's happened and have the big reveal. And also occasionally I just forget my watch. But I'm just forgetful. But yeah, I went on a big long walk on Saturday. It was an escape from the children, just me and 3 other friends, where we did, not very in keeping with my character, but we did a pub crawl where we were hiking across the West Berkshire countryside to 4 or 5 of the poshest pubs I've ever been to.
I mean, Andy doing
So
a pub
many
crawl.
questions.
Yeah.
1, how many fields did you look at? And 2, how many pints did you have?
I had too many pints.
How many?
I'm not glorifying
No, don't.
drinking at all. But I'm not a big drinker, but it was spaced out over the course of the day. We had some beautiful 3-course meals at either end of it. It was very civilized. And then, weirdly, I then went golfing the next day.
What? Are you
So
okay?
What have you become?
Yeah. You drinking and golfing in a weekend, that's not
the same.
Yeah,
normal
also,
Andy.
where did you send... Did someone take over the creche for the weekend?
I left my lovely wife with 3 children, so I've cashed in some fairly
Yeah,
serious
both days.
marriage points in order to earn this weekend away.
Rick
Rick looks absolutely flabbergasted.
I feel like I've lost a friend.
Can you even play golf?
Oh no. Absolutely not. I wasn't as terrible as I thought I would be, but I definitely wasn't good. But we had a few drinks during the day on the Saturday in pubs that I was reliably told that Kate and Will, on first name terms obviously, regularly drinking. So
This is unbelievable.
they were absolutely stunning. So yeah, I've had a lovely weekend, but not very much running in the weekend. I'd squeezed it into the week beforehand.
Me neither. I took the whole weekend off.
Cocktails.
What? No. Oh yeah. You were doing the same, weren't you?
So I went
Social
on.
life?
Yeah, I had a social life this weekend. I went away with my oldest, dearest friends from school. I'm not that old, so we realised though we'd known each
My
other.
oldest, dearest friends from school that I finished last year. Brilliant.
We realised that we'd known each other for like 15 years, but we hadn't all been in the same room for like the last 2 years. So everyone had to prepare a PowerPoint for what's happened in their life for the last 2 years. And it was incredible.
That's a damning personality indictment, isn't it? That's where you guys went to. Yeah, let's all do a PowerPoint. Let's just all sit around and chat.
It was honestly just a flashback to like who hasn't done their homework.
Me.
But yeah, it was very good. No running, but this week I'm running. I've picked it back up, and I've got to run 6 times. So
6 times.
Everyone pray for Sarah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That seems like an awful lot, Sarah.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's not all too intense, but the week after I am attempting a 5k race. So this is my last hard week before I give it another bash. Although there's a video coming out soon where I gave 5k at bash and went pretty well. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned for that
Tease.
one. But Rick,
Tease.
actually, I got a little glimpse into this story beforehand, but I don't know the full thing. But you were pretty emotional, so you've had an emotional weekend of running.
I parkrun on Saturday. We clapped in this woman who ran it in around about 35, 36 minutes, and there's a bunch of us all clapping her in, and we learnt her story afterwards that she had a baby prematurely at 25 weeks.
Oh God, yeah.
Wow.
And
okay?
she was on holiday and wasn't expecting to give birth.
Yeah.
And went into labour. The baby went into hospital, was looked after for months in hospital.
Yeah.
And the baby's now fine and should live a normal life, which is
great.
absolutely
That's
great. But
amazing.
this moment changed her life in the fact that she decided she was going to get fit, healthy, start running. She didn't even own a pair of trainers.
Yeah.
And now she's running, doing parkrun, and decided that she's going to do the London Marathon. But not only that, she now dedicates her whole life to raising money. A lot of her life when it comes to running, raising money for premature babies and the baby charity Bliss to help them get equipment and train doctors and so more babies have a better chance of survival when they're born as early as 25 weeks. And I was just listening to the story.
Well, yeah, you've just had a baby, so I'm guessing that's even
it
more.
was so, emotional just listening to the story and like just really inspirational. And it was one of those times where you just felt the power of running and, a life-changing moment come together and just really eat at you and go, wow, that's changed your life.
That's one of the things as well, like on London Marathon Day, there are so many people running for incredible charities with incredible stories, but these people are also at Parkrun every week.
They are.
Showing up, running for the most incredible causes. Incredible
and
reasons.
changing their own lives in the process. So, I had a relatively emotional parkrun at the week.
Lovely. Well, it feels like a little bit of a crass segue to go from such an amazing, inspiring story to then talking about should you change your running form. But that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether either of you guys have got any questions directly about it, whether we should just jump straight in.
Ooh, so one question I have is my running form when I am running like a marathon or like an easy run, very, very different to, I think, mentally if I'm running around a track. Should your running form drastically change if you're doing like longer, slower runs compared to them when you try to do sprints?
Yes.
Okay, good.
There we go. I think that's the end of the
Done.
podcast.
Next podcast.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for listening to episode 27. Yes, it should change because, and what's interesting, well, you can be the judges, as can the listeners, as to whether this is interesting. I have a very specific, probably, pace where I'm at my most efficient mechanically, where it feels comfortable, where if you were to look at a video of me running, it looks the best in terms of fastest, springiest, longest strides, all that sort of stuff. And then I'm relatively inefficient at other paces, and I can feel it. And I'm more likely to get injured the slower I run, I think, in terms relative to that, because I spent my career trying to run really fast. So yeah, it should be different because you can't have the same stride length and cadence and posture necessarily at all of those, at all the different paces you might run at. Think about all of the things that make up a good stride. It's your posture, so how tall you are, whether you're pulling your shoulder blades back, your hips are nice and high, making nice foot contact underneath your center of gravity, all of that stuff. A lot of that comes from arm drive, and you can't have a massive, powerful arm drive if you are running relatively slowly. But if you're sprinting up a hill, then you need that arm drive to kind of power you up there. So there's always, a happy medium to strike as to how efficient you can be at certain paces.
So essentially, our running form is actually changing throughout a run as well as from day to day. So the question when people ask, should we change our running form? That's kind of our overall form and how we move while we're running. But actually, like you've just said, during a run or a race, we're going to be having different form throughout, aren't we?
Well, it depends on. So you'd have a different form in a 10K race to in a marathon.
But if you're going up a hill, aren't you changing your form?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess I only pick flat races. Andy's
like a hill in a race?
Haven't you just signed me up for a really hilly race, Sarah?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, thought so.
That'd be fine.
I agreed
So
before you told me it was hilly. By the way.
It's also trail, Rick. You're going to have a great time.
Oh, God.
Stay tuned with that.
All of those things affect it. And even in a run, we would say that, or certainly good advice would be, if you're just doing a run where you're not going to have a dedicated warm-up necessarily to it, then going out for the first 5 or 10 minutes with a slightly reduced stride length, increased cadence, that lowers the impact on your body while everything gets warmed up. And then you could sort of start to stride out a little bit. But yeah, I think the question is, you're bombarded with loads of information as a runner about what shoes will do to your running form, what running drills can do to your running form, what stretching might do, what warming up properly might do, what running up and down hills might do, whether you should change your cadence. Like the answer ultimately is yes, you can look to improve your running form, but it shouldn't be your aim to fundamentally alter your running form. So most the people I've spoken to in the physiotherapy field would say something along the lines of your body self-optimizes really well. So at any point in time, depending on your relative strengths and weaknesses of different parts of your body will allow you to run in the way that is optimal for you to run well, to limit injury and all of those sort of things. But you can improve it to a point. But if you're looking at another person and going, I want to run like them, and they have fundamentally different flexibility, mechanics, length of levers, all of that stuff, then if you want to try and copy them and say, I'm going to have a cadence of this number and my stride length needs to be this long, that would be fairly disastrous.
I feel like this is a lot to take in.
We're taking it in. So going back to like, if someone's like, okay, I don't think I'm as efficient as I could be, they're wanting to change their running form, but wanting to avoid injury.
Yeah.
Where should they start with trying to change it? What should they do? What shouldn't they do?
Well, interestingly, the previous episode of the podcast, we talked about strength and conditioning and doing some little tests at home in front of the mirror, whether that's like a single leg squat or just looking at how your knees and ankle strength are. That would be the starting point. But then a really easy thing to do is to video yourself when running. Particularly, most phones have a slow-mo setting now. So set it up directly behind you and then run away from the camera. Then do the same and run directly towards the camera.
What kind of pace? Should this be your...
The pace that you do most of your runs at, or the pace that I would say not really, really slow, so not your easy run pace, like a little bit faster than that.
Not like Tom Cruise.
No, not all out. Because you're trying to optimize for the thing that you do most of your training at. So think about your steady run, probably would be a good starting point.
Okay. So
and then do a side-on shot as well. Run through the frame.
So how would we spot a bad habit if we do that?
Yeah, so you're looking for... I think it's really powerful to look at a video of yourself because you can't otherwise have it in your head as to what it is you're trying to change. And then you need to think about what the ideals are and then how far away from those you are. And then just try to make like a 5% change, not a 50% change. So think about things like a lot of runners, me included, hunch over as they get tired. And I'm talking about shoulders. So they're almost like bringing their shoulders together at the front and hunching over. Curving their spine. That means you've got less space to get oxygen in, so your lungs are kind of constricted. So working on things that will pull your shoulder blades back and down together is actually a good starting point. I know this doesn't seem like immediately running form, but if you're thinking about this string that pulls up your head and your whole body in a straight line, then the way that your shoulders are immediately affects the way you move your arms, which affects the way you move your legs. So sort of starting top down at the moment.
It's an interesting one as well. You could just go out, record yourself running, but actually if you want to improve your running form towards the end of races and like start improving or knowing where you're going wrong when you get tired, after like a run or a long run, get someone to record you and then you're going to see all of those habits. And if you've already actually got the video of you running fresh, you can compare and like see what's going wrong at the end. Yeah,
that's a great shout. Or even try and get a family member to get their phone out as you're coming into that last 100 meters of a 10K or actually at that point you might get a little bit of a adrenaline boost because you can see the finish line. So almost you want someone to record you a few hundred meters before that. So you want someone to pop out.
The like 4K mark of a 5K.
Yes, exactly. And just record as you're tired, as you're really like, all you're thinking about is I want to get to the finish line, and you're probably not thinking about good form running cues. So yeah, I'd start at the top with shoulders, and then I'd be thinking about hips. What we've just talked about there, I would guarantee that most people at that point, 4K and a 5K or 9K and a 10K, etc., their hips have sunk a little bit. So they're almost making contact with the ground with their knees a little bit bent, their bum kind of closer to the ground. They're almost like sat back into their running. And a lot of that can come from core strength because you don't have the strength to hold your pelvis in the right place. And also, we talked about it in the strength and conditioning podcast, it's path of least resistance. So some muscles will be fatiguing because they're not well trained and things like that. So, but that's something that you can teach in drills and in the runs that you run when you are not fatigued. You can be thinking about nice high hips. That's like a simple cue to think about. So you're pulling your shoulder blades back. You can do exercises, rowing type exercises in the gym to give you that strength. Bear in mind that a lot of runners will default to doing something like press-ups or bench press because they're like obvious, simple gym exercises, but they're actually quite bad for runners because making your pecs on the front of your chest stronger generally ends up tightening them as well.
Someone needs to have a word with Mo.
Mo from the running channel is absolutely ripped. Yeah, stop with the upper body. Only because we feel insecure.
But I think Mo balances himself out. And also
so he then does the rows and the chin ups and lateral pull downs and stuff to compensate. But push ups on their own without any work to doing strengthening your back will end up with this kind of hunched posture.
Sarah, do you think you've got any problems with your running form that you'd like to fix?
Oh, good question. So I get filmed a lot whilst I'm running, and the first thing I actually always do is if I'm like reviewing videos or watching stuff back is go, oh, how's my running form? I would definitely say I'm guilty of hunching over at the end.
Yeah.
I think I've got very good at knowing what it should feel like, but it's actually what I need to work on is just constantly reminding myself of that in a race situation, because it works quite well as a distraction. If you're really hurting and you spend 30 seconds going, okay, let's form check, go work your way down your body and go, am I happy with everything? I would love heel flicks, but I think that's a like aesthetic nice to have as opposed to I would love that.
And they look like you're putting them on. I feel like I turn into a shuffle. I think I do kind of like a supermarket trolley shuffle by the end of any long run. Like I just look like I'm wobbling.
So I have a question about this. Tom from the Running Channel, he always gets into running form where his chin ends up touching his chest, which I've seen.
I don't know where that comes from though.
A lot of people do.
Really?
Yeah.
I never thought about this one.
Is that because obviously the ideal is to have a string coming out the top of your head to pull yourself all the way up.
Yeah.
I always, if I go out running with him and this starts happening, I'll always pull him up on it and he'll be like, but that's just how I run. Should he be thinking about his head movement? He's also behind the camera right now, hating me.
I'm practicing that now. It's a strange thing to do, isn't it? I don't know where that happened. I think it's as people retreat into their own thoughts to try to focus on it. In fact, it feels quite hard.
I see.
You almost like tense up a little bit.
I think as well, like for some people, I've definitely done it where I'm like, oh, I can't get enough air in. And then for some reason it feels better to like pop your head down and go like, to like try and get more in.
That can't be true though, can it? I think you want everything to be elongated so that you do have maximum oxygen capacity. There are other things that can happen. Your feet can start wandering into a center line. So if you imagine running on a line on the road, in the ideal world, I think your feet would land slightly to either side of that line, or certainly there would be. They're not both each foot coming all the way in, and maybe even some people crossing over that center line because as they get tired, and that's the sort of thing that can cause problems with your IT band, knee pain, all of that sort of stuff. So being strong enough in your glutes. Ultimately it controls your knee movement.
So what would be the ideal line then?
So if you were making contact with the ground and there's this center line in front of you, it'd be your right foot would land slightly to the right of that line and your left foot would land slightly to the left of it, but they both wouldn't land on the line itself.
You can also like kind of see in the winter if you're getting a bit tired because you end up with like little mud marks on your ankles.
I catch the inside of my calf. Yeah, so they get a lot of mud, all of those massive trail runs that I'm doing. But I did used to do cross country once upon a time, and bash the inside of my legs. So yeah, you can kind of see that happening, and then try to focus on it as you get tired, thinking about using your glutes to like squeezing your glutes as you're running to activate them to kind of hold your knee out, stop it dropping inwards. I hammer on about that, but that's the biggest thing. That twisting at the knee is what causes a lot of people problems.
So if people are out running right now listening to us. Hello, hope your run's going well. What if they wanted to run through a quick form check now? Yeah. How would they do it?
Shoulders back because it opens up your chest. And you can also do that by relaxing your arms a little bit. So don't have your arms really high and tight. You do want to have nice relaxed shoulders, and you can relax your hands. That can help with that as well. So you don't want to get too tight. Imagine that string pulling up from the top of your head all the way up. Like imagine it sort of elongating your spine, making you taller. Keeping your hips up up and forwards. So not allowing your bum to sink back. And then just making sure that you kind of think about this nice plane of movement that is forwards and backwards, not side to side. So you want your knees and feet to be coming through forwards, not kind of hitting the ground, rolling inwards with either your ankles or your knees following them in. And to do that, think about using your glutes and your hamstrings to kind of squeeze a little bit, pull your leg underneath you and power you forward. Not massively, obviously you don't want to stop sprinting. And then nice light foot contacts as well.
Sarah, you've just, listening to Andy then, you just pulled yourself up, pushed your shoulders back and shook your hands.
And I was imagining as I was doing that, I was imagining either people out on the run who now will have great running form, good job, or I'm imagining someone who's like, oh, damn, I'm sat at home listening to this, just running around their sofa, trying to be like, can I do this? Yeah. Well, that was really interesting. Thanks you, Andy. If anyone has any questions about running form, do email in podcast@therunningchannel.com. You are listening to the Running Channel podcast. Up next, we've got your questions to answer. Plus, we've each picked a new story from the world of running to discuss.
So it's almost question time, my favourite bit. But first off, we got our news picks of the week, Sarah.
I know this didn't happen this week, but I just want to circle our minds back to the British Athletics Championships, which I still am seeing on social media for the wettest 100 metres I've ever witnessed.
Yeah, this was Zarnal Hughes, who's set, I think, the fastest time in the world this year for the 100, running incredible times. And they ran really fast in the semi-finals at the British Athletics Champs in Manchester. And this is the trials for the World Champs in Budapest in August. And yeah, these pictures and the footage is ridiculous. To the point where you think that the camera person has forgotten to focus it or somehow, or someone's just turned the lights out.
It does look like, you know, when you see like really heavy, intense rain in a film, and like quite often, well, usually that is mocked up.
Yeah.
And you watch it and go, oh, that's real rain isn't ever like that. No, it was. It really was.
Proper
but yeah,
standing water on the track, right?
Yeah, like honestly looked like a music video in terms of amount of water. But yeah, Hughes had set 9.83 seconds, a British record last month in New York. Yeah. So obviously you must have done that, and then he must have been thinking, great, let's like bash out.
Come back to sunny Manchester.
Yeah, come back and run another one.
What did he do it in? 19?
No, he ran like 10:0 something.
Really?
Yeah, like he still ran really fast.
Still rapid.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Did you ever have to race in torrential rain?
Yes, I did. I ran. I remember it vividly because Louise, my lovely wife, often reminds me that she was in the stands, uncovered stands in Sheffield.
Ooh.
So they had a big Grand Prix Diamond League equivalent back then, 2007, in Sheffield, and it was proper torrential rain, like
proper rain.
Puddles standing on the track. You could see the like this, and this is what it was like in Manchester as well.
What do you do at that point? Because surely you have to stand on the track for a little bit.
Yeah.
So were you just there like fuming?
You get cold. Yeah. Well,
how waterproof were your shoes?
Not at all. Not at all. And yeah, so you get brought out on the track and you leave your kit on for as long as you can, and then but then they're going to take the boxes away, and they force you to get undressed. They force you to get into your race kit, so your shorts and vests, which are underneath what you're wearing. You whip that stuff off, and then you're on the track, and then they're getting ready to do like the TV introductions and stuff. Yeah. And everyone's trying to do their strides, and then they stop you doing the strides because they need to do the TV introductions. And then often stuff's like slightly delayed, so you're stood on the line for a couple of minutes, and it was freezing cold. Well, I mean, relative for July or June, whenever it was cold and raining.
Is there a bit that goes through your brain of like, if I run too hard, I'm now cold, so I'm going to get injured?
At that point, no, I was like totally in the zone, and part of me was in athletics things go through cycles, but in that period the Kenyan athletes were dominant, and there was a bunch of Kenyans in the race, and I was kind of thinking, this is good for me, like, they're
rain good. You're used to rain, they're not.
Yeah, exactly. They're not used to these conditions, and that was my breakthrough race in my career. Actually, 2007, I beat Bernard Legat, he actually went on to win the 5K and the 1500 at the World Champs a month later. And so that was this massive thing. I was like, I can compete with these guys. And so the rain might have helped me a little bit. I ran fast. I ran a PB at that point. Like it was...
hey, everyone prefers different weathers.
Yes, exactly.
I quite like a run in the rain.
Yeah, I was going to ask whether this would age us. What you immediately jumped into your mind when you said it's like a music video with the rain that was falling on the track.
Oh, no, I was thinking of like throwback stuff.
Okay. You think Westlife?
Like Kylie Minogue.
Did
you do one in the rain?
I thought Westlife.
I was thinking Take That.
Oh yeah, well that shows.
Yeah,
that
it's
shows.
that era.
Yeah.
I don't think a music video's come out this year that's in the rain.
Okay.
Well,
bold claim. I don't know music.
It's a bold claim, right? So my news story, very different. Interesting that you'd picked the elite athletics one, which is nice.
I know.
You saved me. Mine's not to do with athletics at all. Again, but with the Wimbledon tennis championships have just finished.
How are you going to wangle this into running?
Yeah.
Hey, I was
Let's
interested.
talk about tennis.
Yeah. Well, I love tennis for a start.
Yeah.
But I was interested. I wanted to find out how far they run in a match.
Oh, in a match?
Yeah.
Ooh, can me and Rick guess?
Yes, that's what I thought. See, we're in.
Okay, I'm bought in.
You go.
Right.
I'm not going to change. I've got something.
Well, hang on.
Men's or women's is an important one because
A
they play.
5-set match or a 3-set match, and also how long is the match? Because if we're getting towards 6 hours,
So I'm gonna level with you and say I don't have enough data to give you all of those options. I have lots of averages, but I'll clearly if it's a women's 2-set match versus a men's match that goes to 5 sets, there is a big difference. But I have averages for a couple of players and some examples.
Okay, so what would you like us to guess?
Guess the average total match for a man.
Average total match for a man. Okay,
yeah.
I've just made this really boring, haven't I?
Yep, you've ruined it all.
5.1 kilometers.
Okay. For a match.
For a match.
Yeah.
5.1.
7
kilometers. So you're both. I think I had thought this because it's always surprising when you watch a football match and they say, so and so ran 12K or something.
Yeah.
As one of the central midfielders. It's less than I thought. So on average, I think in the men's matches, it was between 2K and 2 miles. So basically between 2 and 3K.
Wow.
For a men's match.
Okay.
This is at a Grand Slam.
I always thought tennis was quite easy.
Well, the court's not very big. I think it's 27 feet wide or something. Okay, wow. Right into complain at podcast@therunningchannel.com.
Funny.
But
I mean, you wouldn't be able to play it, Rick.
But I was trying to find stuff that I thought was interesting. Was that
That is interesting. Yeah.
So I was Googling Djokovic and so on. And the stat that came up was that this is going back a few years now. So 5 years ago at the 2018 US Open, Djokovic had, by the time they got to semi-finals, run 7 miles across all of his matches, which at that point must have meant he played 5 matches, I think. But then Federer, who was also in the semi-finals, had only run 4 miles at the same point in the match. I don't think they played massively loads different sets, but I guess depending on how far behind the baseline you stand and you're running side to side, as well as how good you are and whether you dictate the play and basically just stand in the middle making everyone else run around, it's going to have a massive difference on how far.
I always think there's a lot of wasted movement in tennis. Like if you the guy who's waiting for the person to serve, watch them. Honestly, next time the receiver. That's that person. The receiver, the receiver is so far behind the baseline that they're bending down, squatting, kind of moving side to side, and then when he actually hits the ball over from the other side, he just stands up and hits it back. It's like just a load of wasted
Up next
movement.
on the podcast, should you change your tennis form?
No, but they've got to stay. They've got to be moving constantly because the moment that it's serving, they're anticipating at 130 miles an hour where the ball's going to go, and if they're not moving, they'll flat-footed and then they can't get to it.
Yeah, Rick.
Gosh, all right, sorry.
I do think this every year though. Like if you see, so Andy Murray this year went out, but he had a really long match before he went out across 2 days because of they had to stop play because it was too late. I think.
Yeah, that's right. They had the 11 o'clock curfew at Wimbledon. Yeah.
Like surely that must go through your mind because if that happens, then you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to play in a final, but I've been out for hours and hours and hours longer than my opponent. Yeah,
and the nutrition's interesting, but also the fact that that they're averaging, I think, I had it in meters and feet. 40 feet per point was the average that Djokovic was running at that point in that data. But if you think about maybe say 2 miles over a few hours isn't very far at all. Every single one is a 10-meter sprint flat out.
Yeah, I wonder what their 100-meter time is cumulatively.
Explosive pace.
Well, email in podcast@runningchannel.com if you want to see a competition between who would run a faster 5K, Andy or Djokovic.
I'm up for it.
I'm not sure
he is. Novak, let's get involved.
Well, we obviously need Djokovic to agree.
AI exists.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay, I can race an AI Djokovic.
Yeah.
Okay, you're listening to the Running Channel podcast. Up next, we've got your questions.
Okay, kicking off with Scott, who says, after listening to Rick talk about his injury and getting back to running, I was wondering if you guys have ever had long-term injuries yourselves. And if so, how did you cope being out for long periods? Did you do anything while injured? I've been out since January and I'm finding it really hard to not go out for a run, especially as I'm meant to be doing my first marathon in May. Sarah, it's tough, isn't it?
It's really tough. Obviously, this question came in a few months ago, so please email in, Scott, if you were able to do the marathon or not. But I feel like this is universal. Lots of people are out with injuries, and I count myself very lucky that I have had injuries that I've been able to work through cross-training. So I haven't had to complete dead stop for longer than a week, I would say. But I think one of the things that you can really underestimate is how it's easy to slip into a routine because we constantly have days where we don't run. So it might feel easy to slip into a routine. You forget running because it will be a part of your day, but not every hour of every day. But I think don't underestimate what that is the mental toll that it's going to have on you as well. I know I am. Loads of my friends have said I'm far grumpier if I haven't been able to go out for a run. So that's what I would be consciously thinking about if I was injured and wasn't able to run for a long time.
Yeah, the mental health impact's really not to be underestimated at all. So I have dealt with this a lot. So I got injured directly before major championships, where I then had to frantically rehab and or have really aggressive physio treatment, which you wouldn't normally get as a normal runner. Like there's a very different medical approach to you've got to be on the start line in 10 days to I want you to be as healthy as possible in 3 months. So that was hard to get my mind around. But then I did have a really serious knee injury between post 2012 Olympics all the way through to try and qualify for Rio in 2016. I spent most of that period injured in some way. and trying to build up my running and then breaking down again. I did write a blog for Mind at the time, back in 2015, 2016, which was sort of it started as this cathartic thing for me to just get out how I was feeling. And then had an amazing response from it, from a lot of fellow elites, but also non-elite runners who were like, oh, it's like you read my diary. That's how I've been feeling. So we'll try and dig that link out and maybe share it. But I really struggled with losing my sense of identity. I'd meet new people and be like, they'd be like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a runner. But I wasn't running, and I hadn't run for like a year at various points. And I was still trying to be a professional runner. I didn't have another career. I didn't have anything else to talk about. I just felt like totally devoid of that sense of identity. So that was hard. But then I did put everything in every day to just like, one more day, I'm going to chip away at this. I'm going to do everything that I've been told. I worked much better when I had a clear plan from a physio or a coach. I was like, these are the things I need to do. I'm going to do them today to the best of my ability. Wake up tomorrow morning and do that again. And I would be cross-training. I'd be in the gym. I'd be doing a lot of swimming and biking and stuff. Obviously, it depends on the type of injury you have. But I guess know that other people feel similarly.
Yeah.
Talk to people about it, and just take it one day at a time. So chunk your recovery and follow a plan. Go and see an expert, get them to help you. That'll take the weight off your shoulders of feeling the responsibility to get back running, and then just tick off the things that you should do every day.
Yeah.
No one does the physio exercises that they get given, but if you do them, then you'll likely be able to recover.
Yeah. No, really good advice. I completely agree with what you just said, Andy. I think actually trying to take up another sport, that if you are able to do that,
You cycle.
I started cycling,
yeah.
and it really helped because you just go on long cycle rides and it takes your mind off it completely.
And then you cycled the length of Wales.
That didn't go as well. did complete it though.
Back to running.
On to Ken. Don't know where you're from. Here he comes. What advice would you give to older runners about their routine? I'm 72 and I run 10K normally 3 times a week. Wow. I run at a fairly even pace of 9.5 minutes per mile, about a minute slower than 10 years ago. Apart from a little swimming and walking, this is the only exercise I do. First up, Ken. Impressive.
Ken, I want to be you.
10K 3 times a week.
Yeah.
I think it's important that having so obviously I'm not 72 and I'm also not a medical professional, but my thoughts here are that my understanding is that if you reduce your weight bearing impact based activity like running, then that can, the older you get, the quicker various other things can decline. So like your balance, your musculature, like the strength that you have. So keeping that in there is really important. So supporting it with swimming and walking is great. But having that level of impact kind of keeps you younger. And once you remove it, it can be quite hard to get back up to it.
Yeah.
Because obviously, particularly in men, I know that testosterone is declining every year past, I think, 30 or 40. And those things all have a big impact on your body. So being able to do that is great. I think the advice that I'd give him about his routine is try to maintain it. Do take a look at heart rates and things and make sure you're not overdoing it. But if he's been doing it for a long time and he's relatively well trained, then I think Ken's the one that should be giving us advice.
Well,
we need Ken's routine.
I would also say that strength and conditioning in older and younger runners is the most important. You know, what I learned during my injury was that actually, as you build up to about 2021, your body can take in a lot more strength and conditioning. It's when your bone marrow is developing, and that's a really important time for you to be doing strength and conditioning. Between 20 and 45, it essentially looks after itself. But then after 45, doing weights actually really helps keep your bone density and strength. So for Ken, it's probably worth building in some weights into his routine.
I think that's exactly what I was not very eloquently trying to get at, is that bone density element of both impact and resistance training that can sustain your bone density much later in life more effectively than, if you only ever swam, for example, from the age of 40 onwards, you'd stay fit from a cardiovascular perspective, but there's different types of fitness ultimately to be functional and move around.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Obviously, don't jump into anything brand new, but if you can go get like a runner's MOT or head to a physio and see what they would suggest, that might help you keep consistent and keep running for even longer.
Yeah, nice. Let us know how you're getting on.
Yeah, good job, Ken.
Super stuff. And don't forget to email podcast@therunningchannel.com if you've got any more questions.
I just realised we had a question from Ken on the same week that Barbie is released.
Oh,
what are the chances? And there's a bit of pop culture that only I'm going to relate to. But you've been listening to the Running Channel podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've got to the end of another episode. If you don't like Barbie, don't worry, I won't talk about it ever again. Thanks and goodbye.
Bye.